Welcome back. You ever have a meeting where a whole bunch of people are trying to get things done, but it just doesn't happen? How does your company rate when it comes to reaching agreement on tough issues? Consensus. Business consultant Don Maruska is author of the new book called How Great Decisions Get Made. He joins me now to explain how it's done. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lane.
Now, you've worked with several companies. You have a Silicon Valley background, a business consultancy now. How do people just get down to brass tacks now? You have a 10-step program here in this book?
There are 10 key steps to reaching decision on even the toughest of issues with the most diverse groups of people. And those really key in on getting everybody together, all the interests that are involved, all the people who have information and ideas and perspectives, getting them to clearly articulate what their hopes are, and then following a process that gets all the information out on the table without any debate whatsoever. And that's really fundamental, is being able to get all the information out without the divisive debates that get people pitted into their own positions.
How do you start?
You start very simply, and that is indeed figuring out who's got a stake in this issue, who's got some useful information. 50% of the time, the breakthrough ideas come from people that managers wouldn't have thought of to invite to the meeting. So we need to cast a fairly broad net, and the broader it is, the more effective. Now, many people are reluctant to do that because they don't have a process to get all those people working together constructively in the short periods of time that we have available. What this process does is give them the tools to do that quickly and efficiently with wide involvement at the very beginning to make sure we get the buy-in, commitment, and creative ideas that are going to lead to the breakthroughs that we need.
A lot of managers find themselves in a situation where they only want to talk to managers because they don't want to dissent from a lower point, and the people that are directly below them are less likely to say, no, you're wrong about that. How do you break out of that if you're a manager? How do you spread your wings a little bit and talk to people who are actually doing the work?
Well, the key thing to that is to really level the playing field for involvement in the decision process. Now, ultimately, the key people in the company, if that's their role and responsibility to make the final decision, have to make those calls. But we've got to get people involved and have to create a safe and productive environment for them to be in to do that. And in order for that to happen, we really need to first start off and get people talking about, well, what are we really hoping to accomplish here? You know, not just, what's the surface idea. I've been in companies where people have been pressed by immediate deadlines and thinking, oh, I've got to make a decision because I've got to get an ad in the next day, or I've got to do something else. And they don't step back and say, well, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And when they do that, new and creative ideas that weren't even on the table come about that are far easier, quicker, and more effective to put into place.
Now, one thing you note in the book is about how the different categories of personnel who end up in a meeting, and how they act and react. It must be very difficult to get past some of these people, and you list the way they approach a meeting, and it can be really destructive to the conversation.
Exactly. Well, we've got some of the classics. We've got the gladiators, those people who just want to go into battle and pitch their own idea, defend it against others, and really struggle through. And then you've got other folks who really want to hang back and say, hey, I don't know, this doesn't look like a very safe environment. I'm just going to observe what happens, try to see which way it's going, and hope I can get out without unscathed.
They're concerned if they stick their neck out, it's going to get
lopped off. Both of those folks are really fundamentally operating from a place of fear. Fear, in the case of the gladiator, that they won't prevail, so they want to put their most forceful foot forward.
A good defense is the best offense there.
Right, exactly. And the others are really taking a look at saying, okay, they're fearful of what might happen, so they sort of flee from the situation. Both of those are failures for decision-making because the best ideas don't come out. The way to move people past that is to get them to talk about what are your hopes and why are they important to you. It really switches even the brain chemistry of people when you ask them those two simple questions and gets to a much broader range of potential solutions. Multiplies the array of options and the creativity of those options by a factor of 10 every time you do that.
How do you keep the good energy moving, though? How do you find yourself, okay, you've had the sit down, you have a conversation, ultimately managers have to make decisions. If the decisions go in a very different direction than some of the people who actually opened up to them and said, well, here's some ideas, how do those people go back into the next meeting and continue to offer ideas if they weren't necessarily listened to the first time around? Okay,
well, there's an assumption in that question. That assumption is that if we go through this discussion, that there are going to be some winners and losers out of this, and how are they going to regroup the next time, and will they show up, and so on and so forth. What I found over and over, and I've done this process with dozens of organizations, Fortune 500 companies, startup companies, community groups, government agencies, and that in every case, when people go through the 10 steps, which they can do even as short as a half an hour, they come to agreement on a common solution. And the reason they do, and the reason you don't have people bent out of shape and unwilling to show up next time, is that they've been able to get all the ideas on the table. No one's been positioned to advocate one point of view or another. And therefore, they feel like it's been a very fair and open exchange.
And you even say, write down what's been said, write down the choices that are made, map out the future.
Right, exactly. That's critical. Because what happens when you do that is that you really find out exactly where everyone is. So many managers start a meeting, say, hey, how about if we do this? Never checking with their people to see if that's really the best idea. They just sort of bullet through, and other people sort of say, oh, I guess that's where it's going, I want to go with it. And we lose track of really where the positioning and interests are. So we need to do that, and we need to quickly then map the solution set. It's a visual picture that you get out of this process that tells you exactly what to do.
Don Maruska, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lane.
Once again, the book is called How Great Decisions Get Made. Plenty still ahead here on Bloomberg Small Business. Stay with us. Back right after this.